Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to me. Where have I been? Where have I been, YouTube? I don't even have an excuse for why I haven't done any videos. I've just been in the trenches of motherhood, I guess, probably like most of you. So thank you for sticking with me. Welcome back to my channel, all about child development, behaviour and well-being. I promise I have got lots of good value for you, lots of exciting stuff, and we are going to get stuck in today with a video all about the science of your child's behaviour and how their brain impacts everything they do. This video is a super simple guide to your child's brain. I don't expect you to remember any of the technical jargon. I just want you to learn a little bit about why your child behaves like they do and how you can use that to make your life as a parent so much easier. So often online or in parenting groups, or as soon as we talk to anybody who has any experience of children, we are bombarded with all of their tips. And the tips normally talk about things like how to stop your baby crying or how to get your child to sleep through the night, and all of this really well-meaning advice. But quite often the advice that we're given is to help make our life easier in our kind of busy and rushed culture, which is great because, you know, everyone's to-do list is bustling and it's tough. It is tough to be doing and juggling it all. But lots of this advice doesn't really take into account how our children develop, how their brains develop, and how their brains are different to us. It means that our children, see the world in a different way to us. And the sooner we recognise that, the more we can understand that, the easier we can make childhood for them, but also the easier we can make parenthood for us. I'm not saying don't listen to that advice, but I'm hoping what I share with you today will explain why we don't want to just shut down our babies crying and why we need to really tap into the reasons why our children behave in a certain way. So let's talk about the brains that we're born with. Our babies are born unfinished. Unlike any other animal, a dog, a horse, a cat, our babies aren't born knowing how to walk or talk or communicate in any way other than crying. And then if we compare how children develop over childhood compared to a baby animal, humans develop incredibly slowly too, because there's so much for our babies, toddlers and young children to learn. We're all born with our brain, and the brain has three main sections: the forebrain, the midbrain and the hindbrain. Don't worry, you don't need to remember that. There's also lots of other parts like lobes and stems and systems, all of which are incredibly important, but we don't need to talk about that now. To make things easier, when I'm working with parents and for the purpose of this video, I like to break those three main parts into a super simple acronym that's easy to remember, and that is SET, S-E-T. And it stands for survival, emotional and thinking. And it's how I like to think about the brain. So the forebrain is the thinking part, the midbrain is the emotional part, and which one haven't I said? The hindbrain. See, even I don't remember them. The hindbrain deals with all things survival. Survival, emotional, thinking. Hindbrain, midbrain, forebrain. Okay, that's the tricky stuff out of the way. This is where we're really going to learn about how that set brain impacts your child's behaviour, and this will change everything for you. So the brain is like the headquarters of the body, and it's thought to start developing just 2 to 3 weeks after conception. So for lots of people, myself included with my first, this is happening before you even know that you're pregnant. All of this amazing stuff is going on inside a mother's body for the baby's brain development. It's super cool and super technical. I'm not going to go into how that sequence works today, but I've written more about it in a blog post, which you can find the link for in the description of this video. The things that we do need to know is how our behaviour towards our children can impact their brain development once they're born. The quality of the interactions that a child receives, especially in those early years, forms patterns in the brain that helps them throughout life to learn and communicate and problem solve, and so many skills that we all just use really naturally every day as adults. But let's talk about the SET, because that's the bit you're really here for, isn't it? So the first part of the brain, the part that we are born with, that's ready and functioning and ready to go and always with us, is the S, the survival brain. And it's the part of the brain that keeps us safe. It's the part of the brain that makes all of those kind of unconscious decisions like breathing or swallowing, you know, the stuff that keeps us alive. It's also the part of the brain that is responsible for instinct and the fight, flight and freeze behaviours that we all know about. It means that in the first year of a baby's life, and as our children grow, it's something we go back to a lot, so much of their behaviour is instinctive. They're not thinking about it. They will cry because that's all they know about. They will tantrum because that's how they feel they're going to keep themselves safe. I've talked about this lots before, online and in person, that lots of our children's behaviour cannot be helped. They can't help the way they're behaving because their behaviour comes from that survival part of their brain. And that part of their brain senses threat. And that threat could be you telling them off and them being worried that they're not going to get that same love and care. Or that threat could be being chased by a lion. The brain can't differentiate between what's a real threat and what is a perceived threat. So our children feel threatened. They feel like there's a target on their survival brain, but of course they can't articulate that to us. So the survival part of the brain has a huge influence over their behaviour, and it's something for us to be really aware of when we see kind of more challenging behaviours, shall we say. So then we come on to the emotional brain, and this is the part of the brain that deals with all of those big feelings that we see so often. This is where we see their response to stress, separation anxiety, fear, all of those big feelings. The emotional brain is where we also see lots of that act first, think later behaviour. You know, when your child does something and you can tell by their face instantly that they're like, shouldn't have done that. We all do it too. You know, even as adults, sometimes we react in a way and we think, oh, that wasn't actually quite the right way to deal with it, because we're reacting from our emotional brain. This is where our children are at a lot of the time. This means that they can't control that impulsive behaviour, and we need to be understanding of that. That doesn't mean that we need to say, yeah, it's fine for them to hit their sibling, but understanding why they are hitting out when they're frustrated. This is where emotional regulation really comes in, and it's something that we can help our children with. And again, I've got a link for that in the description of this video, where I've written another blog all about that. In short, the emotional brain is where we see things like hitting or smacking or reacting. Any impulsive behaviour that we probably don't really want to see comes from here. And as I said, this happens to our 3-year-olds, our 5-year-olds, our 7-year-olds. It goes on. It's not just restricted or limited to toddlerhood. Then we come on to T, the thinking brain. This part of the brain continues to develop into our mid-20s. And I think when you think about that, the amount that a child changes from babyhood to toddlerhood to preschool to childhood, right the way through primary school, secondary school, college, and it's still developing into the mid-20s, it's just like, wow. Like, explains a lot, doesn't it? This is exactly why we can't expect our 4-year-olds to behave in a certain way if even our 14-year-old or a 24-year-old may struggle with that. We have to be really understanding. The thinking part of the brain is the part that helps us to plan and predict. It's where we get things like problem solving, decision making, logical reasoning skills. It's where we can start to regulate our own behaviour, providing all of those things have been happening throughout childhood. The thinking part of the brain is also the part that can distinguish right from wrong. So sometimes our children behave in a way because they are really, really overwhelmed and they cannot help it, and they are acting from the survival or the emotional part of their brain. And other times they haven't fully grasped what is right or wrong. And this is a really tricky thing, because actually we've all got slightly different definitions perhaps of what is right and wrong behaviour with a child. And I think this is why it's really important. This is why I love making videos like this, because I think it's so important for parents to understand that not all behaviour is done to get on your nerves, quite frankly. Sometimes our children really cannot help it, or they don't understand why the way that they're behaving isn't what you want to see. We get developmental spurts for the thinking brain throughout childhood, but it's where we need to be really realistic with our expectations of our children. They cannot always behave in a logical way, and the more that we can see that, the more that we can think, okay, maybe they're having kind of their own crisis here, and this is why on this occasion they're not behaving as perhaps they did 3 months ago, or a day ago, or a week ago. Like, it can change from day to day. So, survival, emotional thinking. What happens now that you know all of this? When things crop up with your children over the next few days, few weeks, few months, I'd love you to stop and think, okay, where could this behaviour be coming from? Yeah, it is really annoying when after school they are tearing around the living room, or not listening, or just wild. I mean, please tell me it's not just me. Like, it is tough. I know that it's tough. I am right here in the trenches with you. It is tough. But the more that we can see where that behaviour comes from, as in, okay, they've had a really exhausting day at school where they've had to use lots of problem solving and decision making skills. They are exhausted. Their behaviour is likely to come from the emotional brain. So we are going to see that act first, think later behaviour. And as hard as it is, we're the adults. We're the only ones in that situation who can step in and try to support them with their emotional regulation. So try to think, where is their behaviour coming from? Are they operating from the survival part of their brain? When they steal their sister's toy or scream in their brother's face, are they reacting from their emotional brain? Do they feel threatened in their survival brain? Is their reaction coming from the emotional part of their brain? You know, the one where they cannot be rational? By seeing our children's point of view and recognising where their behaviour might be coming from, we can adjust our responses accordingly. We really want to help them to continue that healthy brain development, and understanding their behaviour is a really significant part of that. So in any given moment, we can ask ourselves, where could this behaviour be coming from? And am I being realistic with my expectations of them? I hope you've enjoyed this video. I have loved making it for you. I love talking about the brain and the impact that it has on our children, because I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it can be a really useful tool to help us as parents. And after all, isn't that what we need, what we want? If you found this video useful, if you've got any comments, any questions, I would love to hear from you. So please drop a comment below, and I'll be back next week with another video for you. Bye.